liquid and boiling point already. You can see it's producing bubbles. The bubbles is due to the liquid being at a temperature of 100 degrees Celsius already. It's boiling already. But now you will note or you will see what happens immediately I add the pasta to this flavorful liquid. So as I add the pasta, you see that the bubbles stop immediately, and that is because and after some time it begins to produce, and after some time you'll see that the mixture is producing bubbles again, and this is because now this is because it has returned back to boiling temperature. The boiling point of the whole liquid has returned back to boiling point of 100 degrees Celsius again. Now I'll be explaining the whole process of what happened in this analogy. Um, just look at that goodness. A whole pot of goodness. Alright, so I'll be explaining what happened in the cooking clip that we just watched. Alright, so we'll see that the flavorful liquid was boiling, it was producing bubbles and boiling aggressively, which means it was either at a temperature of 100 degrees Celsius or close to 100 degrees Celsius. But when we added the pasta, we see that the surface immediately became still and it stopped producing bubbles. And then after some time, it started producing bubbles again, which means that it resumed boiling again. So what happened here is actually a principle of basic heat transfer. We'll see that the pasta was cold initially, it was at room temperature. And so when it was added to the boiling water, there had to be heat transfer from the hot boiling water to the cold pasta, which is a principle of basic heat transfer, which is a basic science principle where heat or energy will flow from places where they are low to places from places where the energy is high or where heat is more to low places. So we see that heat had to transfer from the hot boiling water to the cold pasta, and this is what happened here. But after some time, no, the heat transfer caused a drop in the temperature of the water that was boiling. All right, so after some time, the bubbles begin to produce again. And so what happened? What happened here? We see that as the stove the fire kept on heating the pot, and as consequently the water heat transferred from the fire to the pot to the water again, causing a rise in temperature of the water again. Hence, it was able to reach boiling point again and begin to boil again. Thus, it began to boil again, producing bubbles. So this is what happened in this cooking clip. Alright, so we'll be discussing another concept here, which is about starch. So we'll see that pasta is basically starch. It's classified under starch or carbohydrate food, so it's basically starch, complex carbohydrate. Alright, so now there's something we'll be discussing here, something again, which is alright. So when it comes to pasta and boiling water, I'll be explaining another important principle, which is we know that pasta is mainly carbohydrate, and what type of carbohydrate? Starch, the complex carbohydrate starch. So we'll be discussing one important characteristic of behavior of starch, which is gelatinization. Alright, so if the pasta we added to the boiling water sits in the boiling water for too long before the boiling water returns back to the boiling temperature, it's going to cause the starch or the it's going to cause the pasta to release starch aggressively and quickly, and thus the surface will become gluey and to come over starchy, and then the water will become too cloudy because of the aggressive release of starch. This will in the end result in pasta that was gluey or over starchy, which we do not want. But if the water quickly returns back to boiling temperature, it will cause the surface of the starch to release surface starch evenly, and it will hydrate evenly and release surface starch evenly. And so to release only a controlled amount of starch into the boiling water, resulting in pasta that is at the end al dente or firm, which is how finally cooked pasta should be. and resulting in cooking pasta water that is only have contains moderate amount of. When it comes to sauce binding, chefs would prefer the second scenario to the first scenario because water that contains just moderate amount of starch is very good for it's good for sauce binding or to help the sauce whatever sauce the pasta will be finished in or added to the pasta to bind well. This works according to the it works according to the emulsification principle. So the starch acts as an emulsifier to help the water and oil in the sauce to combine well and also help it to stick and stay well on the surface of the pasta. And then the pasta being al dente or just firm will be able to hold the sauce just sufficiently well, resulting in a very good product at the end that is satisfactory even in the mouth of the consumers. But if the starch had become over gluey or over starchy in surface, and then the water, pasta water is also contains excess amount of starch, but to result, it will not be the over gluey or over starchy surface the starchy surface will not hold the sauce well, and then the over starchy water would also not help the water and oil in the sauce to combine or bind well together. So this will result in an end product that is over starchy, over mushy, not quite satisfactory, and the sauce not even holding or binding well to the pasta. And so we do not want such a situation. And so it's we see how that it's quite essential for the water that was previously boiling to return back to boiling temperature well and very much on time. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you were able to enjoy this video